Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at the new translucent collection from Gwolves of both the wireless Hati and the wired HS-K. The most apparent change on the updated Gwolves products are the translucent shells and the texture of the shells. The texture of the shells is extremely good on both copies, especially in-game. And getting right into it, guys, with the HS-K, you guys can see that it definitely is a fingertip mouse. The size and length are very narrow as well as short. And one of the most drastic things on this mouse that could cause somebody to never want to use this mouse is the lack of side buttons. The HS-K is definitely a fingertip grip, but one of the things that is most interesting about the mouse is its ability to make me subconsciously lift my wrist and hand off of my mouse pad. When I use other fingertip grip mice like the Orochi, I usually use my wrist and hand to kind of pivot and then aim with the mouse at times. At times I do lift my entire wrist and hand off the pad, but with the HS-K I find that I am almost naturally keeping my hand and wrist off the pad, which opens up a lot of mobility and a lot of movement and actually feels and plays very good. And one of the interesting things about the HS-K is the fact that the hump kind of aggressively raises, hits its peak early on at the back side of the mouse, and then slopes down very, very quickly towards the front of the mouse. But the mouse is so small that my fingertip grip actually sort of turns into what appears to be a pretty aggressive claw grip on a small mouse like the HS-K, so I actually do not feel that hump at all. And to give you guys a sound test of the switches, the mouse does use KL 8.0s. As far as the texture of the mouse, it is definitely, again, very grippy and feels very good, and the plastic used on the mouse feels more durable and a little bit thicker than the plastic utilized on the old Gwolves products. I don't get the slimy grit that kind of built up on the previous plastic Gwolves products, and as far as my side flex, I have a little bit of side flex more on mouse 2 than mouse 1. And as far as pre and post travel, I have a little bit of pre-travel on mouse 1, not a whole lot of post travel at all. And again, a little bit of pre-travel on mouse 2 and a little bit more post travel on mouse 2 than mouse 1. And to get you guys up close and personal to the mouse, it does have that nice translucent design. I think the color is absolutely beautiful, and being able to see all the innards of the mouse, the PCB, the switches, I think it looks absolutely phenomenal. You can see there is just a small tiny Gwolves logo, and that is the only branding on the mouse, but for the bottom of the mouse. As far as the cable's concerned, I didn't have any issues with the cable binding or feeling too loose, and I don't have any issues of it feeling too thick and not pliable. I think that for me personally, I wouldn't need to change the paracord. I think it feels fine, but certainly there are better cables out there as far as third-party cables. The thing that I would absolutely change on this mouse, however, are the mouse gates. I think the mouse gates are good out of the box, they're just not great. I think third-party skates blow the default HS-K skates out of the water. You can see that the sensor is a little bit down towards the bottom of the mouse. It's not directly centered, and the DPI button is on the bottom side of the mouse. I think that the mouse actually did feel quite good in game, but unfortunately not something that I personally would be able to main on a daily basis. One of the primary reasons, though, is the lack of a side button. I use mouse 4 and mouse 5, both keybinded, in pretty much every game that I play, and not having those keybinds right on my mouse felt very, very uncomfortable for me. I would like to see, again, the mouse have a side button in the future, and I think that it would be great. The only other thing that I felt was kind of off on this mouse, the mouse 3 was very, very, very tight and a little bit hard to continuously use compared to most mouse 3s. I didn't have any issues with the DPI button. The only other thing, again, are the skates. Not the best, but certainly not the worst. But I do want to show you guys how the mouse plays in game, so let's check it out. And definitely in-game, the texture of the mouse actually feels fantastic, and I didn't really think going into this mouse that I would enjoy the size or the shape of the mouse. But once you get it in hand, you actually begin to realize that it feels pretty good as a fingertip alternative to something like the Orochi or the Final Mouse Starlight 12 Small. In Apex, I felt like my controlled tracking, both long range and short range, was good. And even in clutch situations involving the EVA, I felt like my flicks were pretty solid on the mouse as well. Getting into the Hati wireless, you can see that it also comes in the translucent shell. This is baby blue, unlike the aqua color of the HS-K. The coating feels just like the plastic used on the HS-K, and it feels very, very good. That, of course, is one of the major changes on the Hati wireless. The next biggest change, of course, is the sensor. It now uses a 3370 sensor instead of a 3335, and the sensor feels very, very good. The build quality is absolutely phenomenal. I think the texture of the mouse feels great. And unlike the HS-K, it does have mouse 4 and mouse 5, and it also has a DPI button and a scroll wheel that feels a whole heck of a lot easier to push down. The only issues with the mouse, again, are the mouse skates. I do not think that they are the best mouse skates. Again, they are good out of the box. They're just not great. And as far as the other issue I have with the mouse, like many other reviewers, the on-off switch is very, very poor. It feels very hard to turn left, very hard to turn right. And you can see that when you do turn it either left for on or right for off, the piece actually gets displaced and becomes quite hard to get back over to the other side. Getting the mouse closer to the camera, you can see that I actually do have out of the box a little area of these blemishes next to the scroll wheel. I'm not quite sure what that is. But it is pretty noticeable in person, not a big deal, doesn't affect the playability or usability or feel of the mouse, but definitely something I wanted to point out as far as the shell out of the box. As far as pre and post travel of mouse 4 and mouse 5, I have virtually no pre-travel whatsoever, none that at least I can notice on either mouse 4 or mouse 5. Mouse 5, I have no post-travel whatsoever. Mouse 4, I have just a little bit of post-travel at the top of the button, which is very typical on almost every mouse that I've ever owned. The DPI button feels fine. I certainly don't bind it to anything other than DPI, so it's kind of a non-issue for me, but feels very, very good. It does actually move quite a bit, which could be an issue if you are using that for a keybind in-game. As far as the scroll wheel, it feels a lot better than the scroll wheel on the HS-K. It is very easy to push down. The mouse does use Kale 8.0s, which feel very, very good. But I do have the issue of mouse 1 and mouse 2 feeling quite a bit different than one another. Mouse 1 feels very tactile and pops back up very crisply, whereas my mouse 2 feels a little bit more damp and just doesn't feel quite as tactile as mouse 1. But it's not something that is very far off from mouse 1. It's really something that you would only notice if you are consciously paying attention to it. I think both in-game feel fairly consistent, and I don't think that I would have an issue in-game as a result of the different feeling mouse 1 and mouse 2. As far as side flex, you can see I have virtually none. The side flex is very, very good on the mouse. And as far as pre and post travel, I have a little bit of pre-travel on both mouse 1 and mouse 2. And then as far as post travel, there is virtually none. I actually have more on mouse 2, which you can see. And the plastic almost divots inward on the mouse 2. But mouse 1 is actually very firm and feels fairly good. And guys, I think I played very well with the Hati wireless in-game. I definitely want to show you some clips. Let's check it out. So the Hati definitely fits the criteria of a solid, small wireless mouse. I felt like my first game out of the box definitely needed a little bit of a warm-up. My aim was a little bit jittery, but once you get accustomed to the size and shape of the mouse, it actually did feel quite good. My second game of Apex definitely went better than my first. I felt like I was literally just not missing any shots in the public lobby that I played in. Everything felt very good from long range to wingman shots to flick shots, and turning on the mouse was very, very easy. The mouse skates weren't horrible, but I definitely did feel that I do need to upgrade the skates so that they glide a little bit better. I felt like I had not as much speed as I am typically accustomed to. The skates are a little bit on the slow side, but overall the mouse felt absolutely phenomenal and the grip in-game felt super solid. As far as small wireless mice, you have quite a lot of options that are in a similar size and shape category of the Hati-s. You have the Orochi V2, you have the Starlight 12 Small, and you even have the Aerox 3. Now, if you are comparing these and trying to visualize how the Hati would feel and you have an Orochi or you have a Starlight 12 Small, the Starlight 12 Small definitely has the most narrow grip and is a little bit flatter than the Orochi V2. The Orochi V2 kind of comes up, fills out your hand a little bit more, and for me personally is a little bit more comfortable than the Starlight 12 Small. Then you would go one step higher and you would have the Hati-s, which actually comes up a little bit more, fills that hand a little bit more, and almost makes you feel like a little more palmy than the Orochi V2 and the Starlight 12 Small. I do want to bring up the fact that if you do not have liftoff distance issues with the Aerox 3, it really is a phenomenal mouse, separate and apart from the very narrow side clicks and the default mouse skates on the mouse. I think that the Aerox 3 for me is the most comfortable, followed by the Orochi, then the Hati, and then the final mouse Starlight 12 Small. The biggest takeaway from this Gwolves translucent release is definitely that the build quality has gone leaps and bounds over what it was when Gwolves mice originally released. I think that the plastic and the translucent look absolutely phenomenal and feel phenomenal on this series. It is great to see them releasing different colorways. Usually to get different colors, we would have to get a G Pro wireless limited edition release and compete with bots. And it is nice to see a company releasing more colors than just whites and blacks. I can say that the build quality on both copies is very, very good, and the texture is definitely something that is phenomenal. Other than the skates and the other issues that I had with the mice, I can definitely recommend the HS-K if you are looking for a small fingertip grip mouse and you do not need or want a side button. It is something that I played surprisingly well with given its size and lack of a side button, and was actually very fun in game. And I love that aqua color. I think it looks absolutely phenomenal. The Hati wireless translucent blue could definitely be anybody's main wireless mouse. It is definitely a mouse that contends with the top wireless mice on the market. If this shape suits you and this feel suits you, the 3370 sensor performed absolutely phenomenal for me in game. The Kale 8.0 switches felt fantastic, and I really didn't have any issues with the mouse. So for me, I can say that it would be something in my mind that would compete for the top wireless mouse in that bracket on the market right now, and is certainly recommendable if you are looking for a fantastic small wireless mouse and you're looking for a little pop of color. If that helped, guys, please leave a subscription to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.